Hi, I'm Andy Webb from BeCleverWithYourCash.com, and in this video I want to talk about how you can protect yourself against falls in the pound. So currencies are always volatile, they're always going up, they're always going down. We've obviously over the last few years in the UK seen that more so than in previous for quite a long time really. The pound hasn't been doing well at all against the dollar, against the euro, against many other currencies. Now, that might not bother you, it might not affect you on your day-to-day life, but when you're going away on holiday, well, that can be quite worrying because you may well have already budgeted pretty much for your holiday. You might know exactly how much it's going to cost you, how much you can afford to spend. And when you're out there, you think, right, great. But if the pound does fall against any of these currencies before you go, and it could be we're talking about a good few months since you booked your holiday, then you might find all of a sudden it's a lot more expensive than you thought it was going to be. And there's not really a huge amount you can do about those currency fluctuations. They're just happening in the background by world events, market events, all those kind of things that we don't really have as a normal person any control over. But you can do something about actually how much money that you have, how much money you are going to spend. Now, I'm not saying you will want to do this. It might not be the best thing for you. As I said, sometimes these currencies, it goes up rather than down. So by taking a stand now and maybe locking in on some rates, well, you might lose out. But that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about locking in some rates right now. So if the currencies, the pound does fall against its other currencies, at least you know exactly what you're going to be spending when you go away. Now, obviously, this could be going on for the next couple of months, could go on for even longer. So it's a difficult game. Essentially, you're gambling on what's going to happen. So it's impossible to say whether it is the right time to do it or not. But I definitely think if you're going away soon and you're worried about currency changes, then you should be looking to at least lock in some of your holiday spending. Now, there are a few ways you can do this. Obvious one is go to a bureau de change, hand over your pounds and get your dollars, your euros, your yen, whatever it is, back in notes and maybe even some coins. Now, that's not too bad. You won't get the best possible exchange rate out there, but you're going to get as good as, because the best exchange rates, generally, they're not locking in the rate. There's things like Monzo card, Starling card, Tandem's credit card, where you are spending and you're getting pretty much close to the interbank rate, that fee-free spending. You can't lock that in, okay? So if you have got actual cash, the day you exchange that, the day you swap that, well, that is locked in. That's not going to increase in value or decrease in value. So £100 might get you $120 on that day. Well, that's what you've got. If you give 100 quid, you'll get that $120. Few things to think about here. Don't just go to your local bank or your post office to do that exchange. Get online and do a comparison. I always use Money Saving Experts Travel Money Max tool, which compares quite a few different local bureau de changes as well as some of those high street providers. And you might see that if you're in a big town, you've got more options. London, for example, has lots of smaller places that are quite competitive. In smaller towns, when it couldn't end up being, say, Debenhams or Asda even. But do that comparison before you go out and see where you can get the best rate. John Lewis, if you've got a big John Lewis near you, see if they've got a travel money desk because they will price match places. And often that price matching has taken place already. So you might get the best rate going in there. But there you go. That's the first one. Just get some cash. Now the second one is probably more practical because you don't want to be walking around with shed loads of cash for your whole 2 weeks away, do you? Now this is about getting a prepaid card. Now you know about prepaid cards, you've probably used to use them quite a lot in the past. Traveller's checks before that, essentially the same thing. You go in and you'll get a certain amount of cash and it's there on a card to spend. Now I'm not always a fan of these, generally because, well, they can be a bit tricksy. You might get charged for topping up money on them. You might get charged if you don't use them, which is mad, isn't it? If you've got some money on there, it will gradually sort of disappear over time if there's any money left over. And also they might charge you to use it in the UK. So often they're very difficult to get rid of the cash that's left on there, and they can also be quite expensive. But there are a few which are actually all right. And what's really important here, if you are looking at a prepaid card, is you want to make sure that you are getting that prepaid card in the currency that you want to save it on. There's no point in having pounds on a prepaid card right now because it doesn't lock in the rates, does it? So the one that I tend to use, not very often, but I always have it as a backup, is one called WeSwap. You load up the money onto the card in pounds, but then you can convert it, you can swap it into another currency. And the rates they give depend on when you want to make this swap. So the best rate, that 1% charge for making this swap, that 1% is on top of the MasterCard exchange rate. So it's pretty good. 1% is if you swap in 7 days. So great, if you're happy to wait 7 days and do that swap, it's only 1% added on top. But of course, if we're worried about currency fluctuations happening every hour, let alone every day over a week, then you might want to go for something a bit sooner. There's a middle option of 3 days, but if you want to lock it in right now, then you're going to get charged 2% to do it there and then. So it's not perfect. You are getting 2% off the best rate. As I say, if you're going tomorrow, then just get a Starling or a Monzo card and pay with that. But if you're going in a few weeks and you want to lock it in, 2% might be worth paying if there's that chance that those rates do fall down anymore. There are also, with WeSwap, quite a few sign-up promotions as well. So do have a little Google to see if you can get one, maybe a little bit of extra cash on there. There's a refer a friend scheme, for example, which I can give more information to in the notes. You get £5 for signing up. That's all you do. And if you put 50 quid on, you get another £5. So £10 free credit. That's pretty good when the rates are so poor right now to give you cash a little bit of a boost. And if you're going away with partners, or you've got older kids, or you're going with your parents or something like that, then why not refer them to get a card as well? So they'll get the £5 for opening a card and the £10 and the £5 for adding 50 quid on, and you'll get a tenner as well, the same amount back. So between you, it's a nice little bit of money. A kind of an older family can get away. Obviously, you have to be over a certain age to open one of the accounts, so younger kids are not going to be able to do it. So look into that. WeSwap, that's a really good option. There are other prepaid cards out there, obviously, but do your research. Make sure you understand exactly what you're signing up for. Now, a third option, slightly more complicated, it's called a borderless account. Now, what this basically means is there's a few providers who do this. You open up your UK current account, and at the same time, you can also open up a current account that's linked to it in a different currency. And then you've got this UK account, and you've got this US dollars account. So I've got one with a bank called TransferWise. Again, this is one of those new banks where you open it through your app on your phone. But I've got a US dollar one with TransferWise, and I actually get paid in dollars from some of the advertising revenue I get in my blog. It means I can avoid some of the fees I'd get if that was paid straight into my business bank account in the UK. It gets paid as dollars, and if I want to, I can then exchange it into pounds. Of course, there is a fee. And that varies, and that fee can be better than the WeSwap and other prepaid card fees as well. So it's worth having a look at the comparisons. But that means you can hold that money in that separate account for as long as you want, and you can switch it back to pounds if you want, if there's been a change, or you can spend it in that overseas denomination, because you get a debit card that comes with it. That's really important, that debit card. So if I was to go have the TransferWise account, and you've got a Euro account on there, you've got an Australian dollar, you've got a New Zealand dollar, and there's a couple more in there. There's about 6 in total, including the UK. Oh, Euro, obviously. So UK, Euro, US, New Zealand, Australia, that's 5. There's one more. I'll put all this information in the notes. But you can then spend, if I was in New Zealand and I had New Zealand dollars on that account I spent with my debit card in New Zealand, it will come straight out of that. So there's no extra charge. There's no extra conversion fee on top of it. Just that initial fee you put on when you do that swap. And it's not too bad a fee. It's quite a reasonable one when you're thinking about this whole factor of locking things in. So that's TransferWise, so check that out. If you already have a Starling card, now I've talked about Starling a lot. I've mentioned it in this video probably a couple of times. This is one of those new, again, another one app-based bank, but what it does, it's great for sort of just spending overseas because there is no charge when you use your debit card for that conversion. Now, it doesn't lock things in, as I said, but Starling this year has given all their customers access to a Euro account. So like with TransferWise, as I just said, you can open up, as well as your UK Sterling account, you can open up a Euro account and you can transfer between them, no problem at all. So that's quite nice if you're likely to go over to spend a lot of time in Europe. It's really useful if you work between the UK and Europe. Now, that's just like TransferWise, but I'm only mentioning it now because at the time of filming this video, it's not linked to your debit card. So that's the only problem. So that euros will stay in there as euros, and there is a fee, a 0.4% to transfer from pounds to euros. And likewise, there'll be a fee to transfer it from euros back to pounds. So that could get relatively expensive. And you compare it to the 1 or 2% that you'll be paying with WeSwap, it's actually pretty good. But if you've got a Starling account already, look into this because they've said that they are going to introduce debit card functionality this year. So at some point in 2019, hopefully we'll see that. Now the final option, the final thing you can do to try and lock in those rates and make sure you are protected against further falls in the pounds is to prepay as much as you can. Now, a lot of the time I advocate when you're booking your holidays to get ones that you can cancel in advance, because it gives you that flexibility, not only if your holiday plans change, but maybe there's a deal that brings the price down. The downside to that is, well, you haven't paid, have you? So you will pay the price on the day. The price when you stay in that hotel, whatever the exchange rate is, that is what you pay, hopefully with a specialist travel credit card to make sure you get the perfect exchange rate. So how do you avoid this? Well, very, very simply, you pay as much as you can in advance, and sometimes they will let you do that. So look at your bookings. Often they're not cancelable, but that might not be a problem if you're going in a couple of weeks, a month. You know your plans are set in stone. And it's not just hotels. It could be excursions, it could be activities, all sorts of things, as much as you can. Maybe, ferry rides, train tickets. When I went to Cuba, a long time ago now, but when I went to Cuba, partly out of necessity, but I prepaid for a lot of our bus routes. I had those tickets already before I went out there. But you can do that now. So have a think about anything you can prepay. If you are worried about the change in how much your holiday is going to cost, going down, going up, whichever it might be, prepaying is a way to make sure it's set in stone. So there you go. 4 things you can do to hopefully beat any further drops in the pound. 1, get some cash. 2, get a prepaid card. 3, open a Borderless current account. And 4, prepay as much as you can. You might not want to cover everything. How much you do really does depend on how much you can afford the price of the holiday to go up. If it's really essential, your budget is dead on and you can't afford any more changes than have already happened with the fall in the pound, well then do as much as you can. If you're happy to kind of risk it and maybe see your holiday go up by another, could be £10, £50, £100, who knows how much it could be, depending on how expensive your holiday is and how much the rates change. But if you're happy to sort of risk some of that, you might want to hedge your bets. You might want to just do one of those options. Perhaps it's just pay for your hotels. Maybe it's just opening up the WeSwap prepaid card and putting some money on there and letting it sit there. You know how much you can afford. But the main thing to do is to think about it now and not have a nasty shock that when you go away, suddenly things are unaffordable. One last quick little tip on this subject though. Check in your drawers, check with your passport, anywhere you might have left any currency left over from a previous holiday. Because for all you know, you've got a bunch of euros, a bunch of dollars, whatever it might be, sitting there. And that means already, well, that's locked into whatever the rate was years ago, but it means there's less money you have to get right now for your next trip. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy Webb. Head over to becleverwithyourcash.com for more information on this and loads of other topics. Obviously, I'll include lots of those details and links in the notes below. Please do like, share and comment on this video as well and hit that subscribe button. Until next time, cheers.